Hi, and welcome to the Carolina Sotomayor podcast. I'm Carolina, your podcast host and expert womb healer. Just in case you haven't done it already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you want to support us, go ahead and leave a review and give us a rating. We would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Today, we are interviewing and talking to an amazing couple. Our topic is infertility as a lesbian Latina couple. I want to welcome Jenni and Marianne Ortega. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Where are you in the US? I'm in Nebraska. Where are y'all at?
We are in El Paso, Texas, a little town. Well, we're not little, but it's the only town in Mountain Standard Time, but we are in Texas.
As far west as you can get. Yes.
I've only been recently, I got stuck for a few hours in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, but I've never technically been in Texas anywhere other than that airport or Houston airport. I need to make a trip to see you all.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to dive into this topic because the number one reason, one is Jenni and I are friends because she's in my Fertility Foundations Collective, which is my monthly membership to help women conceive with Reiki and heal. But the number one reason that I wanted you on the podcast is to share your story, but also representation. In the fertility space, there's a lot of representation of white couples, white women, and those kind of representation. It's really difficult to find resources, books, magazines, articles online for Latina couples, or whether it's same-sex couples or hetero. It's really hard to find any representation of BIPOC or even for the LGBTQ plus community. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And real quick, we just want to say thank you for inviting us on. We're so honored.
Very excited.
We love your podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely. I think there's just not enough out there in general for queer couples. A lot of the literature that we see is just super outdated and just not enough.
Yeah. It doesn't reflect obviously what like medically is going on right now. You know, these books were written quite a few years ago, and so they're not reflective of what queer couples are trying to do as far as trying to conceive, or like for us that we're a same-sex couple, but we both want to have that opportunity to carry a pregnancy. That's just not something that was really talked about, you know, back when these books were written. So yeah, it's definitely a lack of representation.
So you wouldn't know where to go or what to do, or even like how to have hard conversations, probably.
A lot of the research was our own. We had to, you know, even in looking things up on the internet, it was geared towards a lot of heterosexual couples trying to conceive and being diagnosed with infertility. But it's like what people don't talk about a lot, I don't think, is that as a queer couple, I feel like you're kind of just defaulted to infertility because we don't have the option of, you know, just trying to conceive the old-fashioned way at home, or, you know, that type of thing. So it was a lot of information about what to do for you and your husband, what to do for, you know, your, you know, standard family, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. But we didn't have, there was not a lot of stuff out there, even on the internet more recently, about what you can do as a queer couple trying to conceive, let alone like a Latina couple, you know, coming from Mexican backgrounds, like how to broach that with your family and how to talk about how difficult it can be. There's not a lot out there.
So I think we pick little things from here and there, from this person and that person and their experience. So we had to just create our own little bubble of information that we had.
Did you call and get more information? Like, did you call around and were able to get more accurate modern information by actually like calling doctor's offices? So if a lot of the resources were outdated, you took what was you could pull from them. But I imagine like in El Paso, in that area, you and I had discussed prior, is that there was only 2 REIs. Did you make a lot of decisions based on consultations and phone calls and things like that? I can imagine if there's a lot of outdated information, you would have to do a lot of in-person or actually footwork to get where you needed to go. What would you say?
Yeah, no, definitely. We researched it pretty early on. We found out, yeah, there was only 2 REs. One was a male, one was a female. I have a thing with male doctors, no shade, but so we moved on with the female one who is gay also. And so it was just, we had an amazing doctor who would sit with us and answer all the questions we had. So it was
I love
just
that.
a
But we
lot of
did still do
conversations.
a lot of, well, I know that even before we figured out that there were 2 here in El Paso, you know, there are some that are like national,
Mhm.
like infertility clinics that have either, you know, the opportunity for you to fly out to them or whatever.
Right.
So we even made sure that we were calling them and saying like, look, this is my wife and I. This is not,
Mm.
you know, where my husband's not coming with me to these appointments. This is, you know, us trying to conceive. And we always had to make sure that we put that forward first, because the last thing we wanted was to show up to an appointment, be excited, and then be like, who's that with you?
Yeah, or she can't come in,
Right.
or because we've had some instances with other doctors, not even fertility, kind of making comments about us, like,
Mhm.
oh, well, she's your girlfriend, not your wife. Where if
She's
she
not your
was my
family.
boyfriend,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have mattered. So we do have to kind of,
Because you can lie your way through, I guess, as a straight couple, you can say like, oh no, this is my husband. And no
Mhm.
one will say, well, show me the marriage certificate. But this was, yeah, years ago, not even fertility related, just hospital visits or things like that, where it was, you know, you can't say, oh, this is my wife, and they'll just right away believe
Mhm.
you. They would probably, they may want to see proof, or they
Mhm.
could make a big stink about it. So we have always been really careful, and especially because we knew that this was
A big thing.
yeah, as important as it was to us, we needed them to know from the jump. And we also were like consciously listening to their reaction. It was like, this is my wife and I trying to conceive. And so if there was a long pause, we were like, ooh, that's not good. You know, we wanted them to be like, yeah, that's fine. And like no
Mhm.
hesitation. And that's exactly what we got with our doctor. We were really lucky. And then that's when we figured out that she also conceived as, you know, a gay person, and she is also Latina. So it was like, we knew that we were in a good
It was a
place.
good fit.
I love that. So you became hyper aware of the 90% of the communication that's nonverbal, of like the side eye, or if like
Yes.
if there was a second person, like they're looking at each other or
Mhm.
something like that. That would deter me from a practitioner for sure, or a medical provider. If there was even like the slightest, I'm like very sensitive to doctors. And again, I always choose a female provider just because of my own preferences. But
Right.
I had certain wishes in my birth plan, and I know it's asking a lot, but nonverbal communication is so important to pay attention to, but especially when you're like interviewing and choosing providers that are going to provide a loving, supportive space for you as a lesbian Latina couple, that are like, this is we're creating a family. We want to, the whole process, we want to just invoke a container of love around this whole journey to make it as easy as possible. So I imagine that that must have been so hard going through. Did you look elsewhere? You had mentioned, Marianne, you were looking outside of El Paso.
I mean, there are fertility clinics that I think are just really popular and just very like synonymous with anyone that's trying to conceive. Like
Mhm.
some clinics in New York, there was
Colorado.
Colorado, a smaller fertility clinic that we saw that had a location in Phoenix, and
Mhm.
also one that was a little bit closer to us. I want to say Las Cruces or something.
I think that's
So it
true.
was, you know, before we understood that there were options here, I think we always just I always assumed like, if we want to start a family, like we have to go to a bigger city.
Mhm.
So, you know, we had talked about, yeah, if that means driving a couple of hours, if that means driving 6 hours, like, I guess that's what we would end up having to do. And I guess the same is still true. Like if we were to have to move to IVF versus IUI, we would probably have to add some kind of element of travel. So we had to look at all the different options, and there are the ones that everyone tells you about, you know, the very big clinics where they're doing this on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
But we also didn't really like the idea of being like a number at a place, you know, like, you know, a conveyor belt of appointments, you know, every 10, 15 minutes. We were very, very lucky that our reproductive endocrinologist, or if not her herself, but one of her partners within the clinic, they did every single one of our IUIs.
Yeah. which is very rare apparently. Like follicle checks, any questions we had, it was our doctor. We didn't speak to any nurses. We didn't speak to, I mean, they were there. Yeah, but it was her every step of the way. And if she wasn't there, it was another doctor. It wasn't just, oh, well, this technician or, oh, this nurse. It was doctors, which,
so the level of care you had.
Exactly.
I find that just quite a few of our members in the membership, they lack that great care or relationship with a doctor. And when I hear of like, I have other clients, like I had a client, one-on-one private client in Florida. She had suffered multiple miscarriages, but after that miscarriages, they did hormonal testing. And then when she finally got her first Reiki baby, she's on her second Reiki baby, the doctor would see her. It was almost like every 10 days, she was getting some kind of like ultrasound done because she had severe PTSD from like diagnosed from the traumatic losses. Like the miscarriages were so painful and so severe. When I hear cases like that, and then I hear like cases like yours, and then I hear cases where the doctor's being dismissive or just tells the woman that she's whining. Oh my gosh, it makes me itchy and super enraged. Like, why? Like this, they want a baby. Why aren't you and it just makes me just enraged. Like when people don't get the doctor that they deserve. That's why I believe in advocating or having these hard conversations. What should you be asking? I'm so glad that you were matched with like someone that was taking such good care of you. It makes my heart happy.
Yeah, we really, really got lucky.
So now that we talked about the happy stuff, let's talk about the ugly stuff.
Yeah,
so like, what are we doing now? Let's talk about the shit. So the shit that people say it shouldn't come out of your pie hole. The microaggressions with infertility. So what we as a society need to become aware of. Listen up. This is what you need to not say to a queer couple who are trying to conceive. For the people in the back, this is what you don't say to a queer couple.
Please don't tell us that we could just go about it the old-fashioned way and save ourselves some money, because what you're insinuating is terrible and not helpful at all, and just really, it's like homophobic. You know, like if you tell us like just you could just find a guy and make it happen. Like, not at all something that I want to do ever, like literally ever. And especially not like to try to make a family. Like, it's not a helpful thing to say.
Oh my God, there's so many wrong things about that. like as if that person didn't actively choose when they were dating who they were going to get, like choose as a partner and then get married or have a relationship with and then have sex with and then make a baby with. Or, you know, if they do it like effortlessly or it was an oops baby or what by inadvertently wasn't trying.
At least you like something about that person.
That person out of affection.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
but I'm not
like something
to the penis. That's the penis is not involved here right now. That's not an element.
No. And even just the whole fact of us having to buy sperm was such a weird conversation to have too.
Yeah. I can't imagine. And don't they grade them too? Like, this is like grade A. It
felt like a dating profile. And that's kind of what I tell people when they ask about it. Cause it's so funny. People really don't know. They're like, so what did they say? People have said to me,
like, do they test it? Like, do they know it's good? I'm like, they better for the amount we're paying. Yes. Like, it's not just some random dude also.
People have asked me before, they say, do you get to pick? And I'm like, yes, we get to choose. We get to
There's so much lack of awareness and knowledge about infertility just in general, let alone like sperm.
Yes.
Any kind of donor conceived pregnancy, that there's just so little that they know. And yeah, it's almost laughable at certain points, but yeah, then when people say those kinds of really harmful things, that's not, funny anymore.
Because it also goes back to people even saying, oh, well, the donor, they call him a dad, or oh, well, the father. And it's like, no, you don't say that either.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing. The fact is our kid is not having a dad. 2 moms. This is just a donor.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think that's another thing that people say to us all the time. Like,
What does the dad
look like?
Yeah. Oh God.
Oh, I don't know. Because there's no dad.
Have you ever heard of that Netflix documentary, Our Father?
Oh, yes, we watched it.
Oh my gosh. It was insane. So I think it's becoming more and more about embryos, adoption, and things like that, about insemination, and it's becoming more mainstream. But the problem is what's becoming more mainstream are these really horror stories. There's not any like positive stories of like a loving queer couple or even wanting to create a family and selecting the process. There's no like documentary on like showing like
story.
Yeah, the happily ever after part. No,
I guess it doesn't sell in Hollywood. A lot of people say, so a lot of things that people will say to a couple, non-queer or queer, are just relax, just get drunk. What do you feel like when people say that? What is your reaction, or what comes up for you for your feelings?
Well, I think for me, because people mean well. I know that they do. These are not our family or friends. Luckily, those people in our lives are much more aware of what can and shouldn't be said. But it's like the coworkers or the things like that where they don't really fully understand what we're going through. And I have heard that quite a bit. Like, what you should do. What worked for me. I went to, on a vacation and I got drunk and it just happened. And it's like, obviously that's not how it's going to work for us. Like, you understand, we're going to walk into a doctor's office. Like, we're going to, like, this isn't
Everything is so timed. It's not like, hold on, doctor. We're going to wait. We're going to go take a couple shots. We'll come back. Yeah. Like, that's not how it works.
I'll be so drunk. But like during this procedure, it'll come out splendidly. This is the recipe for a successful implantation.
Yeah, that's never been recommended by our RE.
Yeah,
that's not how it's gonna go.
Oh, I can't imagine saying that to like someone that's going to insert something into my vagina. It's just 1 minute. Let me take a shot to take the edge off.
Let me relax a little.
Just give me a second, please. Yeah, no.
Wait, so that brings up a question. So like if a person is anxious during one of those IUI procedures that you've gone through, have they ever offered you something pharmaceutical to relax you?
I've never been offered anything. I mean, I get nervous, but it's never been to the point of like a panic attack or an anxiety attack. So I feel like if I was, maybe they would, or like wait a little bit, but I've never, it's honestly, and maybe people know, maybe people don't, it's so quick. It's quicker than like a pap smear.
I don't think people know.
Yeah, it's literally like a pap smear.
So what we're talking about is when you're going in for insemination for an IUI.
Yes, an actual IUI. It's the most maybe 5 minutes, but that's really like, it's 3 minutes and it's done. So it's super, super quick. So I think once I did the first one, it was like, oh, okay, I could do another one. So it's not so nervous about the procedure, other than obviously, are we going to get pregnant?
Hoping it works.
That's different. But as far as the anxiety during it, there's no time really to feel your feelings in that 3 to 5 minutes.
So I have another question. Yeah. When you buy the sperm, do you buy enough sperm for multiple inseminations, or can you buy a sperm for just one insemination? How does that work?
Also, things that aren't researched enough or given enough literature on, we actually bought enough, I think too many.
Yeah.
So you can buy them in bulk, you can buy them individually. It's just a tank.
And each vial, you buy them by the vial, and each vial is one attempt.
Right.
So we, unknowingly naively, we bought, I think it was 5.
Yes.
Part of the reason that we bought 5 is because the sperm bank was going to give us a year of free storage, because it's not enough that you pay for it. Then if you buy multiple, they need to be stored. And our fertility clinic doesn't have a freezer. Some do. I'm sure the bigger ones do.
Right.
But our fertility clinic didn't have the option of like, oh, just ship them all and we'll hold on to them. They had to be stored with the sperm bank. And that could have been an additional cost, you know, for the fact that, yeah, those 5 vials that we bought were used over like a full year. And so we would have had to have paid for a year of storage had we bought less than that. So, you know, for better or worse, that's how many we bought. But now looking back and after, you know, thinking about it a little bit differently, we probably would not have done that looking back, because they do say, and again, it's like, how true is this? We don't really know, but it's been said that if you know, do a couple of inseminations with one donor and they aren't successful, but you have, you know, good follicle, like there's no other real extenuating circumstance that would make it unsuccessful, like try a different donor, because you just may not be compatible. Your body may not be compatible with that donor. So we went through, you know, the 5 that we had
from one donor.
And then for our 6th IUI try, we had to get a different donor. One, because we wanted to try a different donor for, you know, research purposes, I guess, but also because I think that the donor that we had chosen before wasn't available.
Right. Which is also another thing you get into is we bought 5 thinking I would get pregnant in 1 or 2, and then we would have enough for Marianne to go ahead and use the same sperm so that our kids are, you know, genetically related. But I think we've also come to the terms that it doesn't really matter to us as much. So if we buy one from one donor and one from another donor, like, I don't think
they're our kids no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of information on sperm buying then is out there, because it's like, you just have to figure it out on your own.
I think that probably that's going to be very valuable for listeners, because can you imagine like another young or another like queer couple that are trying to conceive, like they may not know if they're encountering that. I mean, I have one client that's trying to conceive on her own, and she's having the worst time trying to find an embryo. She can't use her own eggs, trying to find the right embryo, but also like the ethnicity that she's wanting. And that's very hard. She's wanting a Latin baby, and there's just not a lot of embryos to choose from. There's different ones, but not for what she's looking for. And also then an embryo is like a lot of the donated embryos are closed, but the embryos that are going to show you this is the makeup, this is the race and background of the donor's mother, father of the donors, male, female, they want information on who's receiving the embryo. And so that's the circumstances. So like there's these donated embryos for her, but she doesn't get to know the background or the makeup or race or anything about it. Then if she does choose, then they want all the information on her and she wants privacy. So it's really just an interesting space that nobody talks about, like, or how difficult it is for her as a single woman that she wants to do this. And they're like, where's the partner? Like, why can't she just do it by herself? Just as a society and even medical providers, there's still so much deconstructing of our biases that we have to do. So if you were to have people in your life that were needing some phrases or what to do on how to properly show you support and love in your fertility journey, what are some things that they could say or do to help you through that? So we've covered like what not to say. What should they be saying instead?
So I'm going to plug in real quick right here and say, if you haven't joined Carolina's Collective, you should, because she is the epitome of what people should say. And the amount of space she holds for people is insane.
Like if you know that your family is not going to be able to say these things to you, Carolina will.
Yes. Even at that, I will also say, sometimes I'm talking to Marianne and she's like, have you messaged Carolina today? Yes. So I'm like, oh, you don't want to hear it. Not even that. No. I'm just kidding. No, it's not even that.
I love that I'm in your marriage now. Like I've infiltrated your relationship.
Yes. She's like, did you message Carolina yet? And I'm like, No, but I will. So then I do. But that was just
Oh my God,
little
you're going to
plug,
make me turn red.
No. That's just my little plug. But go ahead.
No, I think that if people are looking for things to say, I mean, this is regardless of whether the couple that is in your life is queer or not,
100%.
is, if you just, you don't, we talked about things you don't want to say. You don't want to say just relax. So you want to say, like, what can I do for you? Is there anything I can do for you? I'm holding space for you. I'm here if you need, someone to listen. I'm here if you need a hug. I'm here if you need to just sit in silence. Like, there are so many different ways that I know for us personally, like, we've processed things so differently. I think that I'm more vocal. I'm, more willing to talk about what is happening in that exact moment. And Jenni needs a little bit more time to process and then is willing to come through and talk about what she needs. So it's,
I can identify so much. My husband's a slow processor of thoughts, emotions, and I can, like, he hates sometimes being married to me because I can, like, read him so well. It's like, it's okay. We can talk about your frustration later. When you're ready, I'm here. And he's like, so it's like the side eye of, like, don't read me. And I was like,
yeah.
But you said vows, and I didn't know I was a medium when we got married.
Sorry.
Surprise. Yeah. See, I'm not even a medium. I'm not attuned to Reiki, but I know that there are, I can see it. I can sense you.
Yeah. Next month.
I can sense, when something's going on and it's like, you don't need me to talk your ear off about it, or you don't need me to press you further about it. So I think that's also something valuable for people outside of the relationship is, if you can sense in any way that maybe this is not the time or place to have the conversation, it's probably not, because, I'm not trying to call you out or anything, but there have been places that we're at, family gatherings, and it's like, Jenni's in tears because she's just got a lot of feelings. And it's like, my family means well, our families mean so well. And it's like, then you can see them kind of be like, oh no, it's okay. And then they'll try to change the subject. So, it's just, sometimes it is just about knowing, like, the time and the space, knowing what, and that's also our responsibility, right? To say, like, look, today, right now, I don't have that space, or I don't have, the space to hold that or to talk to you about it. But I also think that our families have gotten really used to, if we decline an invitation, to do something that they, we hope that they don't take it personally. And we've explained to them, like, please don't take this personally. It is something that we're dealing with, something that we're going through. And, we'll let you know when we're feeling ready, better about it, or when we want to talk about it. So that has been a huge thing too.
Yeah. And also, I think for me, it's a lot like some of our friends bring us flowers, which is super sweet. And then they'll be like, hey, I brought you Sonic drinks, or hey, I brought you some bagels. So it's like, you were thinking of me. Like,
what's your favorite Sonic drink?
An ocean water with cherry and cream.
I have never had that. Mine's just a straight up and basic cherry limeade. Like,
the classic. The classic.
That's for a reason.
Yeah.
It's this classic, right? I'm gonna have to try that later. I love sometimes just going to Sonic for the drinks.
Yes, that's the best.
Yeah.
And
I think food is such a great way to show love during a period of time that's either a crisis or grieving or just like transition. Sometimes like postpartum after someone has a baby is transition. So like during that 2-week wait, or even if you're like still planning the fertility and you're interviewing doctors, a good old casserole goes a long way. In the Midwest, casseroles.
Yeah. And we're Mexican, so food is
our love language.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We do that for other people. We cook when there's a crisis, because it's like, that's just kind of what we were taught to do. And so, when our family, now it's almost like, I feel like kind of modern, like our family will send us like
DoorDash.
a Grubhub or a DoorDash, and we're like, this is so great.
Yeah,
Thank you for letting us choose. Like, you don't live in our city, so you can't bring us a physical casserole, but you showed us that love that way.
So much has changed. For me, I sometimes do Instacart. I'm like, tell me everything you need. And you can now do Instacart as a gift.
Yes.
So
we had and do that for us too. And
It
I was like,
very sweet.
little snacks or ice cream. And I was like, that's what I think helps the most is like the little nonverbal things sometimes, because I don't want advice sometimes. I just want to either sit in it or, you know, do what I need to do. So it's like, okay, I'm going to send you this, or, hey, this is a little message.
I'm thinking of you.
And that's it.
Got it. Some other things that I always recommend is after the hype of the event there's usually like a climactic hyped time. Like, so if there's implantation day, transfer day, whatever, make sure as a friend or a family member, you're following up like weeks after the rush of people have dissipated. So like, and understand that if it's a coffee date or a lunch, or even if you're just coming to spend time in their home because maybe they don't want to leave, like sometimes home is like just being home is all they need. But coming and sitting on the couch and you just listening and holding space for the other person, meaning you're not projecting, you're not talking about you. If they ask, then you can say, yeah, but keep it very light. Make sure it's all about them so that they feel seen, heard, and validated. But another love language that somebody said on TikTok, and I wish I knew who it was the other love language is being known. Like having someone, so it's, you know, like the love languages, you know, are quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, and gifts. Mine's gifts. But the sixth love language is being known, having someone know your ins and outs, but also like just knowing you so deeply that perhaps they're doing all of those, but just like having a best friend coming and just like knowing like some things don't have to be said. Like that level of intimacy in a friendship, in a relationship, in any kind of connectedness with another person is so lovely. And so like, not like thought of as a quality. So like, if you know the ins and outs of someone like that, you know, ask, of course, can I come over and bring you coffee? Can we sit? Can I just have the pleasure of listening to you? Do you want to, I call them, do you want to empty out your heart with me? And that's always taken with a yes. So like, can I just come? I want you to empty your heart out to me. And like every single close friend that I have, they've never declined that invitation. And I think that that's super important, is that especially is like just the act of a loving presence can really make a difference. Or as you had mentioned in our planning call, the act of just receiving the invitation, either you're going to, you know, you might say no, is also very nice.
But it helps you feel like, you know, even though maybe I declined a few days ago, you're still thinking about me. You're not forgetting about me, or, you know, us in this case, but it's like you're letting us know like, hey, I'm still here. Like if something has changed, you know, we're still around to do whatever it is that you need us to do. If it is just kind of existing in the same space, not really talking about anything in particular, that our friends and our family, I think, are really good at that. And really good at helping us, meeting us wherever we are, holding space in whatever way that means. And a lot of times it does mean like coming over. My sister will come over and do her nails here at our apartment. And it seems like it always kind of fell in with our like 2-week wait time. And it was just like a nice thing for us to be able to sit here, watch something, talk about something, laugh about something, and
not be consumed by everything else that's going on.
Sitting there in our own thoughts, thinking about, you know, is this working? Is it not? Is this a symptom? Is it not? It kind of like broke up the cycle maybe.
Got it. That just somebody's presence is just so especially soothing. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. As a Latina, there's a lot of stereotypes. Like, for example, if you get looked at, you become pregnant, or that you're expected to be good at cooking, you're expected to be bilingual. And then the last one is you're expected to be able to pop out a baby, let alone a whole litter, so quickly and effortlessly. So how do you manage or work through these stereotypes and cultural expectations with your life? Because those kind of pressures and stereotypes can really mess with your mindset and actually your core beliefs, and then in turn inflict these internal struggles for yourself that cause anxiety and spiraling. How do you like work through all of that?
I think it's bringing education to people who don't know things. For me, I mean, I have a very Mexican grandmother, a very Mexican mother, and so things were just not talked about growing up. And infertility in general has never been talked about, isn't talked about majority, I think, in Latina culture, but I think especially in my family, because nobody's had to do what we've had to do. I'm the first person to come out as gay. I'm the first person to have to do, you know, what we're doing and infertility. So I think educating them and stopping them and kind of honestly meeting them where they're at and their willingness and their knowledge has helped a lot. So it's not just assuming or.
But we're also not, you're not trying to like belittle them for their lack of knowledge either.
Because it's just something that we didn't grow up with.
Yeah.
And knowingly their knowledge isn't just there.
I think that like dealing with the stereotypical thing of how easy it should be for us to get pregnant. I mean, I feel like even though we're having to go through fertility treatments, I think that naively, again, and maybe because of our own kind of bias that we've had in our heads, I think we thought it would be easy.
Right.
Like, I think we also kind of fed into this idea of like, yeah, we'll have as many kids as we want to have, as quickly as we want to have them, as easily as possible. But, you know, that's not always the case. And I think that is something that we kind of had to unlearn, and then we have to help our families and our friends unlearn as well. Like, it's not the same for everyone. Like, sure, do we know people that it was super easy for them? Definitely. But it's like, I feel like infertility, whether you're a queer couple or whether you're a heterosexual couple nowadays, I feel like it's just more prevalent. And maybe it's just because it is more talked about more, you know, recently in the recent years, you know, it has become a thing that people are a little bit more willing to share about. You know, I feel like even, you know, Jenni said she's the first in her family to come out, first in her family to go through all this. Like, I have a sister who's gay. She has children, and even our situations are very different because there are different diagnoses involved with us versus them, you know, and they did what felt right to them. They, you know, didn't share up front. You know, we found out that they were pregnant at the 12-week mark, which is also something that we as a society have decided is what should happen. You know, you should wait until you know, and you should be sure.
But I think that's also a Latina thing, because it's like, you don't want to jinx anything. You don't want to this. And everybody is, you know, doing what they have to do. But I think there's a lot of little things thrown in there of the Latina culture that it's like, oh, you don't do this. You have to put a safety pin on your belly when there's full moons. I don't know if you've heard that one, but there's so many like.
I have not heard that. My friend who's Nicaraguan, she told me, she goes, have you ever heard that as a pregnant woman, or if you have a new baby, not to go outside in the eclipse, because then they'll create a birthmark and then they'll be cursed forever? I was like, what? No, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not my belief. She's like, my abuela told me. It's true.
Yeah, because it's like generational and generational. So many things that like, what they said. Like, I had a person say, but I'm like, no. But
yeah, it just,
she's like, birthmarks mean something. And it's like, I don't have any. So,
right?
I don't have any. My son doesn't have any, and my husband doesn't have any. She goes, good. That means your mom did it right. She stayed out of the eclipse. I was like, I don't know that those are very common all the time. I don't know about that. And her last name is Grillo. So we call her Cricket. So
fitting.
Cricket is Grillo in Spanish. So I'm like, Cricket, like literally like her new stuff. And I'm outing my best friend on the podcast. And I'm like, so Cricket, like, that's not true. Like, but I want to believe it too. Like,
but tell me more
I want to believe it too. But really, is it? No, it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Hispanic culture has like a lot of interesting things to
Wow.
always unpack.
Wow.
Yeah. My grandma has a story for everything.
That's why you shouldn't do this, because you know what happened to so-and-so's baby that time?
Yeah.
It's because and you're like,
I'm like,
everything.
everything. Everything. I'm like, you just made that up right now. And I'm outing my grandma. But in general.
What I love most about your communication with your family is that you met them where they're at with such embracing of love and understanding that you didn't shame them. Like Marianne, you mentioned, like you didn't shame them or belittle them for the lack of knowledge. I think that I had a coworker who once told me, you don't know about it because it's not your season of life. Like I was a single person, didn't have children during the time that she was having her children. And I was like, why can't you just come? Like, why can't you just come to dinner?
Yeah.
And like, she's like, every night of your life is date night because you have no children. And I was like, oh, what? And I was just like, I remember that conversation because she went from my boss to, we worked at 2 jobs together. She was a very wise woman. And when I had Ollie, I was like, you know what? You're fucking right. I was like, I was an asshole. And she goes, what do you mean? I was like, when I was dating my husband, I was like, man, I could do anything, go anywhere and whatever I wanted. And I had so much more money than I do now because there's a little tiny human named Ollie that's with us. And I was just like, man, I get it. You have to get a sitter. And then you have to have the anxiety that you trust the sitter. And just like, so like, my whole point now, that long tangent, is that like people just don't know because it's not their season of life. It's not what their journey is going through. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that it's not their journey, but it does help to meet people where they're at, meaning like have an acceptance and an understanding. Okay, so my abuela doesn't know what an IUI is. She doesn't know that we have to actively go buy the sperm,
Right.
that there's no penis around in our house. So like, you know, maybe I just have to break it down like, mira, nosotros vamos a la tienda de sperm. Like you can imagine, like, because my Spanish is so bad, but that one always gets it like, ¿Tú hablas español? No, I don't. It's really bad. It's really bad. And like, ay, ¿y por qué? And I was like, you know, like, no, we're not doing that. So what has been the biggest struggle through your journey in fertility? Like what has been the biggest struggle?
I think it's, again, the lack of just information that's out there. I had a regular period. I was on time every month, but I didn't know that periods were not supposed to be painful. I didn't know that X, Y, and Z shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be throwing up during my periods because of the pain. I think also goes back to the Latina culture. I wasn't allowed to feel those things because it's like, well, why are you in bed? You're just being lazy. No, you have to go to school. Like
it's hard.
Honestly, yes. And so it's like you have to hide that. And then you go to the doctor. I did my annuals. Everything was fine. Even my RE thought we were a good candidate because my periods were fine. I was ovulating. We were tracking for probably like 6 months, almost a year before we went to her. And so lo and behold, the time before we're supposed to do our first IUI, she realizes I have endometriosis. So then we have a surgery, which is obviously like nobody tells you. You can't get diagnosed really without a surgery.
Right.
So we have a surgery. Hard. Yeah. We have a surgery and turns out I had stage 4 endo, which has been there for probably my whole life. And so it's just, I think, a lack of information on just listening to your body.
What we go through as women. And so it's like the other side of the same coin is like, it's also not the best thing if you're missing cycles.
Right.
And, you know, you say like, oh, I hear it so often, my period's irregular, it's fine. And it's like, not to say that in every case it's not, but you know, it really is not that great. You know, it's something that you could have looked into, or, you know, something that's worth doing your own research on if, you know,
it's worth an evaluation with your doctor.
Exactly. Yes. And so
even and a doctor who listens to you also, because I think a lot of doctors are very passive and it's like, oh, I'll just go on birth control. Oh, I'll just do this. And it's like, or okay, like, but that's not fixing the problem.
What's the true root cause?
A Band-Aid on it.
Let's not treat the symptom.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh, you really were feeling that much pain? It's like, yeah, I was. But it's like, even as young as I remember 16, 17, 18, going to the doctor and them not believing me because I was just young and dumb. But it's like, you don't know my body.
Mhm.
So I think
Right.
that with infertility and fertility in general just goes hand in hand, and like advocating for yourself and knowing, no, I'm not crazy. Like my periods are what they are, or knowing, hey, I don't think this is right. Like, can I do research on that, or can we look into this? So I think that's been the biggest thing with navigating through all this, is just you have to kind of figure it out on your own.
I can
That's
really relate to the lack of knowledge about your period. I didn't know anything about charting. So when they asked me like, how long has it been since your period? I was like, I don't know. It comes every month. And I was like, they're like, how many days long? How long is your cycle? I was like, I don't know. It comes usually on a moon. And I would see the pattern is like, I think it comes on the full moon, but then it changed to the new moon, and now it's back to the full moon. So I just never know. I was like, but like no one ever told me, like I spent so much of my life trying not to get pregnant that when it's time to get pregnant, you just expect that it's going to be okay. So like, 1 in 8 is a statistic that suffers from infertility. 1 in 4 suffers from a loss. So it's just so much like with the struggle with infertility that just, if we have the conversations, it would just be so much better. I actually, just a sneak peek, I am interviewing, actually this whole next season is going to be definitely about a lot about period health and womb health in general, and just having like different like actual medical providers. Actually from the UK, we have a lady from California, we have a Chinese medicine doctor, an MD that only focuses on fertility and pregnancy in California, coming on the podcast. It's going to be flipping wild and amazing. Because when I was interviewing each of them, one of them is called the Period Whisperer. Just so many things. I know, isn't that the best name ever?
The best name ever.
Shout out to her. So many things about our periods that we didn't know about. And I think the more knowledge, the more conversations we have about our vaginas, about our wombs, and about our options for good care and advocacy for ourselves and empowerment, everyone would be better for it. I have one last question. If someone was listening and they were, or if they identify as a queer couple and they're looking to try to conceive, what is the best advice for them to have going forward? I know you've given a lot of advice, but what is one piece of advice for them, for their journey, that you wish you could tell them?
I think that because you're putting emphasis on couple, like we've talked a lot about like, picking a doctor, picking sperm, like all the little tidbits that we've picked up along the way. But I think that if you can just make sure that you prioritize your relationship even above the trying to conceive part, like obviously it's what we want. We want to create a family. We are doing everything that we can to try to conceive, but it can't be the only thing that we're thinking about. We have to think about our relationship still. We have to think about our life outside of trying to conceive, outside of trying to create a family. Like, you have to prioritize the time with your person, and you have to prioritize making sure that you check in with each other all the time. I think that is one thing that I mean, obviously I can't recommend that everyone write a blog, like I know that that's not everyone's cup of tea. That's not something that everyone wants to do. It's something that we decided to do because, it helped us keep our family informed. It helped us spread information when we learned something new. Like, it helped us get that out to the people that care about us. But I think that even if you're not going to write a blog and like publish it for people to see, I do think that what has helped us along the way is like, even if you just like notes app on your phone, write out how you're feeling about something. you can go back and look at that later and say like, wow, like I really wasn't processing this at the moment. I really wasn't, you know, realizing that this is how I was feeling right then, but I can see it now, you know, a few weeks later, a few months later, a year later. I think that, and that way, if you do it together or if you share those notes with each other, you can kind of, because I know that I'm not calling you out again. Am I? But like, you know, there's different processing speeds.
Right.
And like, I'm like,
And
we
that's
leave an
okay.
appointment. We leave an appointment and I'm like, so what about this? And what did you think?
Yeah.
And what are we going to do? And Jenny's like, hold on.
Yeah, I'm like, hold on, wait, we just left.
Yeah.
Let me process.
Oh
But
my
no,
God, I
even
can
with-
identify with Marianne. So I'm like, whoa.
Before we leave the parking lot, let's figure this out.
Yeah. And so even me, I write a couple things and she reads it. She's like, hey, I've never heard this story, or hey, this conversation has
I didn't
never
know
happened.
you felt this way.
So I think communication in general with your partner is the biggest thing. With being a queer couple, there is not the hardest part, but it's like, yeah, we're trying to be inclusive so that both of us feel included during this process, which one partner could feel less included than the other, the person who's trying to get pregnant and the person who
Is supporting.
is supporting. And so I think checking in with each other constantly is key, because I'm always checking in on her like, hey, what can I do to make you feel more included? Like, there's never a divide of like, oh, well, I'm trying and you're not. There's never, you know, putting her down. It's always, hey, what can I do to make you feel included? Or we talk about it like, oh, we're trying to conceive. It's very much wording for us. And I think that's the biggest thing is when you're with somebody to check, hey, what are you comfortable with if I say this? Are you comfortable if I say this? Or her saying, hey, I really didn't appreciate you saying this day. Okay, like we can change that. So I think it's made us like our marriage completely change for the better. And the past year of us trying to conceive has honestly brought us closer because of the communication we've had. So if it's a one advice, it's communication and being open. Because I can be
goals. You really are marriage goals. When I hear, like, you can easily identify a couple who has great connection and a deepest yearning to want to have that emotional intimacy that you have and are explaining, and those who don't, because the willingness to checking in, I think also like being intentional with the kind of communication you're having, because not every communication is the same.
Right.
Confirming like, I received this, confirming, and then also being willing to change is so important. Change wording, change behavior, change action, change plans. I think that's the biggest thing that I see in just as awareness in other couples that either don't make it or struggle, is that, okay, you do the check-in, but the adaptability to change for the other partner or other spouse, whatever, that's the biggest thing, is being willing to adapt to what is needed. And I think it also comes down to when you're happier in your relationship, you're willing to change when you're versus unhappy and
for sure
connected. So when you're in love, but when you feel connected and you have that emotional connection with someone, it's easier to make the changes. And when that disconnect happens, the change, or like it goes from, oh, when you said X word on this day, goes to she's nagging me, or he's like, versus. So I think prioritizing your relationship and knowing like your relationship is first and you're still living life. And there's this extra arm of like, and we are doing fertility, but we have our marriage, we have our couple in our partnership, and we have our life going forward. We have other goals that your fertility is not defining you. I think that that's a good takeaway of like, we are trying to conceive and we have this, but it's just one arm of like the rest of our life.
One piece of who we are, you know.
And we've been together for a long time. And so there's times where we have to stop and remind ourselves like our 21 and 23-year-old selves would be happy where we're at right now. Like, let's live in this moment and like the home we've created and the life we're creating. And so a baby would be cool. Yeah. But it's like, let's just sit in what we've created and what we've worked for. Because even my teenage self would be happy to see where we're at, regardless of like infertility and a baby. Like, this is what we've worked for. So I think stopping and like, I know people say like, oh, well, stop and look around you. But like, honestly, sometimes like Caroline would say to ground yourself. And so
and reflect, breathe and reflect.
Yeah. And to really see like we're living the moments that we've dreamed of when we were younger. And so I think stopping and realizing that also as a couple, as a queer couple, as a person is key to navigating anything.
Yeah, that's so big. Nobody says like what to do when you've arrived to the place that you've always dreamed of. Like, well, there's food for thought. So, well, ladies, can you please tell everyone where they can connect with you on social media and the World Wide Web?
So we are on Instagram at the THEE_Ortegas, ORTEGAS. That's kind of where we'll post about our blog postings that we try to do at least once a week. And if you haven't read any of them, you can literally go through our entire fertility journey from start to finish.
Binge worthy.
Yeah.
I'm a creeper. I look at it.
Marianne's writing is phenomenal. I'm just a little added little bit.
No.
She, put me in, but it's fine. And then our TikTok link is there as well. We're starting to post more on there. But
finally on the TikTok-y.
Yes. So our Instagram is where you can find us and know more about our journey.
Oh, so don't walk, run, and follow them on TikTok and Instagram, and make sure to read their blog. Thank you for allowing us to have an hour of your time. Thank you for sharing your story and being willing to impact so many others. Your words and your voice are so powerful and important. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to hold space and just be in awe of you and learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. It's huge. And it was so nice to go over all this with you and talk with you. And we're so, so appreciative.
And if you haven't joined the collective, do it, because it'll change your life and heal so much of your trauma. And it's the best little group we have. It's the best community.
You're so stinking cute. Thank you so much. I hope you have the best day. It was an honor to connect and serve you this week. If you're a spiritually curious person wanting to conceive and heal blockages in your fertility, click the link in the episode description to learn more about the Fertility Foundation Collective. This October and November, all new members will be learning how to heal themselves with Reiki to boost their fertility. Make sure to grab your seat. Until next time, my friend, know you're loved.